Welcome everyone to the first of our 6 webinars around global citizenship education. This is a beginning introductory sort of workshop around global citizenship. Libby and I are going to talk about ideas related to global citizenship. We're going to talk about global citizenship education and then finish up with some tips on getting started in your context with global citizenship education. So yeah, please do pop into the chat your details when you get a moment. So we thought we'd start by telling you about what is the CAPES. Libby's mentioned the word CAPES before. CAPES stands for the Centers of Asia Pacific Excellence, and we abbreviate it to CAPE and put an S on the end because there's more than one CAPE. The CAPES it's a bunch of universities, basically, Auckland, Waikato, Otago, and Victoria. And they are all part of one big project, which is essentially to raise intercultural expertise for New Zealanders and help them find success, whatever success means, in the Asia Pacific region. And the CAPES are divided up into basically three areas: North Asia, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. And if you want to come back to this page later, you can check out those 3 CAPES, or the first hyperlink on this page is the overall CAPES website. So each CAPE has a number of regions it focuses on raising awareness of. So you can see North Asia on the map is China, South Korea, Japan. And then Southeast Asia is quite a selection of countries. Latin America, I think, also has roughly 20-ish countries, and they are all supported by a team of people at one or more of those universities that I mentioned earlier. The people that you're seeing today, myself and Libby, and our colleagues on screen, Jan-Marie, Pip, and Mary, we are part of the CAPES education team. So we don't have a mandate to focus on any of these areas in particular. Our work is around global citizenship education among the CAPES. So we support the other CAPES groups with their education initiatives, and we do our own mahi around global citizenship education. And this webinar today is one piece of the kind of work we do. You might have heard about our Growing Global Citizens in Aotearoa website. We'll talk briefly about that later. And we have another webinar coming up where that gets explored a bit further. But that website is a place where we have a bunch of articles and resources related to these CAPES regions and global citizenship education. Libby, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I guess in a way, in terms of the regions in global citizenship education, it can be sometimes a little bit tricky to see the connect, when we're talking global and this is regional. And I think that part of the purpose of the CAPES is getting people ready to engage in the region that New Zealand is in, so that recognition of sort of the geopolitics of where we're at now, and that global citizenship education is specializes in the kind of skills and attributes to do that effectively. Yeah,
thanks, Libby. Exactly right. I'll take a moment too to acknowledge. Thank you, Joe, for your note, and Joanne, the note in the chat, and for Sue. We're going to start with a little activity now. So on slide 8, there is a link which we'd love you to click and explore. And we're doing a Padlet here. This is a Padlet asking you, what do you think global citizenship means? If you click that link, this is what you will see. I'll just demonstrate that for you. Great tool for gathering voice. So the question at the top is, what is global citizenship? And we've just given you some prompts. You might be thinking in terms of attitudes, dispositions, actions, and so on. But to respond, you click the pink plus in the bottom of the screen, or just double click anywhere in this space and a text box will appear. You can either write in the subject or in the body. It doesn't really matter. When you're ready, you have to click publish to submit that. And if you see someone else's response that you want to tautoko or like or comment on, you'll see options to do that on other people's posts. So from slide 8, please click that link, jump into the Padlet. It's totally anonymous unless you've logged in to Padlet today. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. What is global citizenship to you? Okay, so let's have a look at some of these responses here. The question was, what is global citizenship? What does it mean to you? And so right away in the top corner, we have awareness, empathy, perspective taking perspective, and connecting, which sounds really positive. Awareness of our place and role in the world. Yeah, so going beyond local and into the global, recognizing that we're all in this together, meaning that we all have a responsibility in the wider world. Yeah, and responsibility is a key word that will come up later today in some of our kōrero. Cultural responsiveness. It's got a heart on it there. Does anybody want to speak to that one? No pressure if you don't feel comfortable.
That was mine. It was just making connections between cultures and making sure that everyone's feeling valued within spaces for their culture.
Oh, nice. Thanks, Erin. Yeah, it sounds like empathy, consideration, connecting. Human connection, learning to work with our planet. And I'm making some assumptions here, but I'm guessing that's instead of on the planet or, you know, working against the planet. Peacemaking, connections, responsibility again popping up, being aware of the distances and differences between us while closing the gaps between us. That's very, I love that one actually. Libby, did you want to talk about any of these at all?
Look, I think in the next in the next slide, it's going to pull together really beautifully, actually, because you've really really highlighted the key ideas. Yeah, I think.
Okay, thanks everyone. We're going to leave that there, so you can come back to that if you like. Sorry, Libby.
Sorry, I was just saying. I think it'll get, we'll get back to it in more discussion as we go.
All right, we're on slide 9.
So it's interesting when we look at the citizenship thing, because you think, well, I mean, how can you be a global citizen? How can that actually be? And so if you kind of break it down a bit and look at what citizenship is, then, we become citizens, but, because the state gives us particular rights and we have certain duties by that. But you get to be a citizen by birth, or by, going to some place and earning your right to be there or whatever. But that can't be the case in the case of global citizens, because there's no world government to bestow rights on everybody. So, some people will say, what's her name? Theresa, I think there've been so many British prime ministers lately, I can't remember. Theresa May saying people who think they're a citizen of the world are citizens of nowhere. So legally, she's onto something in that way. But citizenship itself has 2 parts to its definition, and one part is much more to do with individual the responsibilities that come with rights and behavioural characteristics. So responsibility, which has come up in the Padlet, is really what gives legitimacy to the notion of global citizenship. And of course, we know that ancient civilizations and Indigenous peoples have always known this. This is not a new concept, actually. It's just something that's needing to be revived now, but I'll explain a bit more about that later. So, as I just said before, like no world government to give us those rights. So there isn't a single definition for global citizenship. There are key principles. And I think it is that responsibility that we must hold on to. Responsibility for the things that have come up in the Padlet, to each other, for nature, and so on. We need to sort of be more connected.
Yeah, and just to add to Libby's kōrero, we have an article on our website about global citizenship. If you want to take a moment sometime to check that link is there. And we have a number of resources explaining more about global citizenship. Anything else to add, Libby, before we look at?
I think, I think, look, this is a growing thing, and it is quite complex in a way, because some people will see global citizenship as a completely abstract notion. But I would argue that it's not, actually. It's something that's been around forever, and it's also something that that really exists now in a way that has some solid connections that we'll sort of go into a little in a couple of minutes.
All right. And right now we're going to pop into a breakout room just to have a discussion about these key terms. So there are 8 words, and we're asking you to just have a chat with the people in your breakout about these in any order. If you don't get through them all, that is absolutely fine. You might feel more drawn as a group to 1 or 2 of these words. But the point of the breakout is to have a chat about these words in terms of the kaupapa for today, global citizenship. So I'm going to stop screen sharing and set up that breakout room. Libby, if you would like to just have a bit more chat about that, I will tell you when the breakouts are ready.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so really we're just wanting you to kind of pull out some of those words and see how they connect. And then we can have a bit of, because we've got a bit of time on our hands, I think we can have a bit of general discussion when you come back.
Okay, we're just about good to go. Okay, so I've got 2 breakout rooms. You're welcome to accept at any moment. And I will just set these. How much time should we go for, Libby?
5 minutes. Do you
People
think?
okay with 5 minutes to chat about these terms? Sounds good. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. Sorry to cut you short. I could see nobody had left, but I thought I'd better stick to the 5-minute agreement we had. So now's the chance, if you're comfortable, to unmute or pop into the Zoom chat. What came up for you in that discussion about those terms? Did you focus on 1 or 2? Did you get through the list? What was on your radar in that discussion?
We spent a lot of time discussing globalization and the different ways to consider what it was and to look at it.
Yeah, thanks, Tina. Did you discuss what globalization means?
We discussed what we thought it meant.
So in relation to global citizenship?
Yes, they were linked. And yeah, in relation to global citizenship and just our interconnectedness, I suppose.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, thanks, Tina.
Thanks.
Anything else pop up in discussion then?
I think we had kind of 2 rounds of thought. There was like the industry globalization kind of thing, and then also looking back at the links and getting our tamariki to understand where they're from initially. So linking with tangata whenua, local iwi, and understanding their community before moving out to the bigger picture, moving on to so how your actions and interactions then affect the wider society, but understanding how it affects on a smaller level first, on your own community level first.
Nice.
Yeah.
It sounds like you were talking, Erin, about local, national, global, sort of escalating the consideration.
And just comparing the 2 of them as well. So actually, where I guess it depends on levels and areas and places you're teaching in as well. But, looking at international schools where they have more of a wider world view, and compared to like obviously quite a larger local school, but actually we want our tamariki and akonga to be able to understand and talk about where they're from, but also to be able to respect it, want to take care of it, and then build that out wider.
Nice. And also maybe to have a recognition of those sort of multiple levels of identity, that you might identify yourself here and now, but you might identify yourself in the region, say in the Pacific or the Asia Pacific, or indeed as a global citizen. Yeah. Cool.
And something I think I picked up on from what Erin was saying was building a sense of tūranga waiwai. Now, this is the place I stand on, but actually I also have connections that go beyond that. Thanks, Erin. Any other comments about these terms?
Yeah, so once we sort of get a bit of a handle on what global citizenship is and what it is to be a global citizen, the kind of responsibilities that we have and the understanding of who we are and so on, let's have a little bit of a look at what global citizenship education is. And it's interesting this word globalization comes up. Globalization is an economic model largely, and education has been has become an extension of that globalized economic model. And global citizenship education, or global citizenship, is kind of like the responsibility side of that, because we know that this globalized economic model has largely been about homogenization, so that hasn't been particularly good for local and regional identities, and it has been based on growth and extraction of resources, of human and natural resources and so on. So a lot of the things you identified in the Padlet around global citizenship were really reflected that responsibility side to the economic model. So global citizenship education itself is a real thing. It's an internationally recognized framework for holistic and I see a real opportunity for transformative education. It runs through early childhood, primary, secondary, tertiary, and indeed to lifelong learning. Its roots lie in initiatives such as Education for International Understanding, that goes back to the early days of UNESCO, Global Studies, and Education for Sustainable Development. It prepares Ākonga to meet the needs of the complex world we live in. Again, this is something you've really, the complexities of our world is something you've already really tapped into. UNESCO frames global citizenship education around 3 domains of learning: cognitive, socio-emotional, and behavioral. So it is holistic. It's about every part of the child and every part of the school. So why do it? Why should we do this? Well, it is an opportunity to transform education. So that's a good reason to do it. Responsibility. I can't kind of emphasize this enough, this responsibility part. That personal responsibility to act in a way that where we treat each other respectfully, where we are connected ecologically, where we respect human rights, cultural diversity, so on, so on. But also there are other responsibilities that we have to consider here, and that's local and international obligations. So to Te Tiriti o Waitangi, to the New Zealand sort of constitution as it is, Bill of Rights and so on, the New Zealand curriculum, and some other international instruments that I'll talk about in a moment. Indigenous perspective, you've also brought this up. This is crucial that we listen to Indigenous voice. And this kind of framework gives us a mandate to ensure that that happens. You know, we can't do this without Indigenous voice. You often hear talk of global competence, future focus, being equipped for the world. This you know, provides a framework for that as well. Raising achievement and self-worth, breaking down silos. We've become so siloed in our education system and geared towards assessment. So this can also offer a space to value education beyond assessment, to develop thinkers. You know, we're still kind of operating on this sausage factory model where we're churning people out to go into, you know, certain careers and things, and it's not so good for developing or empowering young people to think deeply and ask the big questions that they need to. It's meeting tertiary expectations. So what I mean by that is that, you know, a number of universities now have global citizenship or certain levels of competency that they're acquiring, and people are coming through secondary school not really being quite there. Engaging in society, and I link this to the thinking, but to the responsible action as well. It's so important for young people to have the power to be able to engage properly in society. It's increasingly complex. They're faced with media where they're bombarded with information. It's really, really hard to navigate. And so to have the skills and the place where they can learn how to explore ideas really safely is vital. And to have the responsibility to do that and to know what to do it, and to be politically active too. So getting back to UNESCO a little bit and other international instruments, one of the strategic areas of UNESCO's international sector has global citizenship education at its core. Again, as I mentioned before, it started with Education for International Understanding. It also aligns with the pillars of learning, UNESCO's pillars of learning, which probably most national curricula around the world are based on. And that's the 4 pillars: learning to know, learning to do, learning to live together, learning to be. And in 2012, there was a 5th one added, which is learning to transform oneself in society. these are all perfect fits with global citizenship education and education for sustainable development. Now, interestingly, UNESCO has these two things, GCED and ESD. They're pretty much the same thing. My preference for the language of global citizenship is that I think it captures everything that's in there a bit more easily. Sustainability can have different meanings in different countries. And also, I think it's predominantly environment loaded to most people. So that's but really there's actually no difference in the two. Can we just have, the next one. Yeah, so in the Sustainable Development Goals, which I'm sure you all know quite a bit about, Goal 4, which is quality education, has a number of targets behind it, as all the goals do, but target 4.7 specifically talks about global citizenship and sustainable development and a number of other things. So when we look at it in this way, this is not just a nice thing to do, but it's a requirement. So actually this, global citizenship education is actually taking values and all the things that may be considered to be soft skills seriously. I think we're going to be moving on to our framework within that too. Now, so actually, just before we go into that, if I can just say, so UNESCO's got this framework, and there are various frameworks. The OECD's got its global competency certificate. There are certain frameworks there, and they are just frameworks. There is no set model for global citizenship education. There are certain set principles, but no set models. And so each school can develop its own according to suit its kaupapa. But we're just going to go, Stephen's going to explain a bit about our framework, the CAPES framework, which is a framework that can be used and is being used to develop this.
Thanks, Libby. I'll just pause there too. Are there any questions for Libby at this stage, or for myself, or comments about what you've just heard in terms of why global citizenship education, UNESCO, SDGs? Are there any wonderings you have at this stage? All right, we'll crack on. And I'm going to talk about the framework that Libby mentioned that we have as part of our kaupapa. So if I just show you this new tab up here, how many of you have been to the Teach APAC or the Growing Global Citizens in Aotearoa website? Just a quick show of hands. I'm pretty sure Jeff has. Okay, so this website is where we host all of our resources. We're looking at revamping the site soon with some design changes and some functionality changes. But you can find on here our framework for global citizenship education. I'm just going to talk about it really briefly because we have a whole nother webinar later that will go into this a lot more deeply. So the idea is that we have based this on the Understand, Know, Do framework that you might have come across in the Aotearoa New Zealand Histories curriculum, except we have a slight change. Instead of do, we have act and change. So understand is the three big ideas that we are hanging global citizenship education on. And they are identity, connections, and responsibility. And we've already heard some of you mention that in the Padlet today, which is really encouraging. So those are what we think of as the foundational big ideas. And then knowing global citizenship through the context of Aotearoa and the three Capes regions is another way to explore those big ideas. Ultimately, we want students to get to a point where they can act when they know about global challenges, issues in the world, or even in their region. They can act in response to those and ultimately cause change through their actions, and look at other changes that are happening and evaluate those with a critical lens. So we think it's a really nice way to weave the principles that Libby mentioned earlier of global citizenship education. It's just our framework. As Libby said, there isn't a framework, but this is the one we stand by. Anything to add to that, Libby? Don't want to give it too much because there's a whole other webinar on that.
No, that's right. Don't give it all away now. That's right. But it also, just to say that these, the key ideas in the framework here really do align so closely with all of those other frameworks as well, and so it really is just sort of drawing attention to those key principles that you'll see, that there's coherence. Although there are a lot of different frameworks around, there is a coherence across them.
Thanks, Libby. We've got a final activity for you to engage with today, and we are looking at doing an answer garden, which will generate a word cloud. We'll capture the word cloud on the next slide soon. But the question for you is, now that you've heard a bit more about what we think global citizenship education is, and we've looked at some terms, what initiatives do you now think are happening in your context, whether that's a school, university, whatever? What global citizenship education initiatives are you aware of in your context? And to respond to this, you'll click this link. You'll be taken to the answer garden page. And the idea here is that we'd really like you to type 1 or 2 words. If you can try and encapsulate that in 1 or 2 words, hit submit. And you can only enter the same response one time. But if you see a response someone else has said, and you think, oh, we're doing that too, you can enter their response to make the word cloud emphasize that idea. So just one more time, back on the slideshow. We'd love to hear your thoughts on what initiatives are happening in your context around global citizenship education. Click the link for the answer garden, type your response, hit submit. And if you want to refresh your browser from time to time, you'll see the answer garden word cloud will grow over time. I'm going to stop screen sharing so you can grab that link and have a go. Are there any questions about that? Libby, I remember you talking a while ago about some examples that people might not think are global citizenship education, such as decisions the school might make around getting rid of waste.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So I think it's an easy trap for we teachers to think that this is all about the curriculum, what goes on in the classroom. Global citizenship, certainly the most effective global citizenship education is whole school. And so when you start to think about what's already going on, it might be in the procurement, it might be in the school, thinking about sustainable ways to do its rebuilding or repairing or getting some solar panels, or sorting out the waste management, or having cultural, celebrating diversity in ways in schools, or having various kind of groups dedicated to those things. So inside the classroom, outside the classroom, but in the whole school community as well, so that you'll find it in all kinds of places that you might not realize.
Thanks, Libby. Okay, I think we're about ready to capture this as a screenshot. Does anybody want a little bit more time to add anything extra? Okay, I'm just going to refresh here. Take a screenshot. Okay, so if you refresh your slides, you'll now see that answer garden is on slide 18. And we'll leave that there now. That's a record of our kōrero today, our discussion. Okay, so we're going to finish off with Libby having a quick chat about how you might get started with GCED, and then we'll talk about some upcoming webinars, and then we will say ka kite for the day. So Libby, do you want me to screen share this bit?
I can just see, I might just pop up my own, so I'm fine without it screen shared. So look, it's not necessarily an overwhelming thing to get going on global citizenship education, and it doesn't necessarily cost a lot. So as I say, whole school really is the goal. That's really the way to embed it in a meaningful way, because it is holistic, and all those parts of it, that cognitive, socio-emotional and behavioural, kind of needs to be reflected in all the stuff that's done. But you don't have to the school doesn't have to just radically change everything all at once. And it might be that somebody who takes the lead on it, which might be you, just kind of gets going. And I think from my experience largely of having set up models in a couple of schools and talked to a lot of people who have done similar in different countries, is that there are certain tips that you kind of need to go by. Like, it does need some leadership, and it needs to be sustainable. So in that way, it's good to give your project a name. It doesn't have to be called global citizenship. That doesn't really matter. but it, you know, that's largely what it is. And it also needs a home. It needs somewhere where students and teachers can go and say, okay, this is where we meet to do things, or this is where I might find resources, or where I might, you know, talk to the leader in charge of it. Someone to look after it is really crucial, because we know that so many of the great initiatives that happen in schools get started by a keen teacher who then moves on and it disappears. So this is something we want it to be sustainable and scale upable. So yeah, also, as we know, need to get buy-in, and there can be a lot of resistance to this kind of change. People thinking, oh, this is something else that we have to squeeze into a crowded curriculum. We've got so much else to do, and is this is going to be a passing fad? But so what's really important is to value what's already gone, and that's part of the activity that you've just done. You know, like, just check out what's already going on there and pull it together, draw together those threads, map it out and go, look, this is really awesome. So what we're doing here is developing having a conceptual lens and framework to capture all of that good stuff and to grow it. So really to support the good stuff that's going on. And you can start really small. Communicate well to the staff, to the students, and to the families, really crucial. And get the students on board. I think students get accustomed to different language really, really quickly. And because their time at school is such a massive fraction of their lives, something that goes on for a year or two from their perspective is suddenly a tradition that might as well have been there for 20 years. So things can become established really well through the students, and getting them then working with the teachers and the families. I think it really helps.
Okay, well, we've just about come to the end. So we'd love for you to pop into the Zoom chat now. Please tell us, what is the key takeaway you've had today? What's an idea that has stuck with you, or a theme that's resonated with you? Or what is something that you think you might go and do as a result of this webinar? So just take a moment, pop your thoughts into the chat, and then we'll wrap up with a quick chat about the upcoming webinars and how to register for those.
And also any support that you might like to get going.
While you are typing away, I will just talk about the upcoming webinars. We have 5 more in this series, and the next one is in week 10 of this term. That's Global Citizenship Education and your localized curriculum. So that will be with, I believe, Jan Marie and Libby, I think, or perhaps Pip.
Is it?
I don't have it in front of me.
Oh, which one's this one? Sorry.
Number 2.
2.
Yeah. After that, we're talking about the Understand, Know, Do framework and global citizenship education. We're looking at Aotearoa histories and global citizenship education, Indigenous people, and then design thinking to finish off in week 6 of next term. So you can register for any of these anytime, and we'll always send you a reminder email on the week of the webinar. Eventually, all of this will be compiled into an article for the website, and if you've missed any of them, you'll be able to find them in that article. Now, thank you for popping your thoughts into the chat.
You may also have some ideas on sort of future webinars that you think might be useful. So like particular areas like maybe how global citizenship links to different learning areas or something like that.
Indeed. Joanne's talked about looking at the website before the next webinar. Yep, great idea, Joanne. It's a pretty cool website, we think, with lots of good reading and lots of awesome videos too in some of those articles. Jeff is saying thank you, Jeff, for coming along. Good to see you again. Tina looking at a conversation with teachers and yeah, figuring out what is already happening. It's really good to ask people what is going on. Erin's reassured that they're on track. If I got that right, Erin? And looking forward to the one about Aotearoa New Zealand histories. And Sue, looking at the website in more detail. Thanks, everyone. Just to finish off on slide 22, as Libby said, we also do professional development. For schools, we can talk with you about how to apply to the ministry for funding, so it doesn't cost the school anything. And we have a bunch of ways we can support you. So get in touch if you like. Slide 23, I'll just quickly screen share this before we finish up. on slide 23 is the CAPES education team. And if you attend every webinar, you will at some point meet all of us. Today it's Libby and I. You might notice Mary, Pip and Jean-Marie are also with us today, and Lauren. And if you want to get in touch with us, our email details are there. Jumping to the last slide, if you want to follow us on Facebook or Twitter or sign up for our newsletter, the links are there on the last slide. All right, thanks everyone. Go well, have a great evening, and hopefully we see you again in our next webinar. All the best.